35 years have gone by, and Santiago Flight 5113 is still talked about. No one can explain the mysteries behind what happened, and it will forever remain a freak of nature. Santiago Flight 513 was a commercial plane operated by Santiago Airlines. The company had been operating for a while and was quite successful until the incident that brought its downfall. The uneventful day was September 4th, 1954. Flight 513 was scheduled to take off from Aachen in Germany, traveling to Porto Alegre in Brazil. The plane was filled with 88 passengers and 4 crew members, making it a total of 92 people on board. After the routine ritual of checking in and making sure everything was all right, the plane was cleared for the journey. After a short while in the air, the plane just disappeared. The control tower couldn't find Flight 513. It just went off their radar, and efforts to restore communication with the plane were futile. They couldn't reach the plane. When it dawned on the control towers that this was a huge problem, a search and rescue operation was immediately initiated. But there was a problem. No one knew where to start looking. The plane had disappeared over the Atlantic Ocean. And for some of us who don't know, the Atlantic Ocean is the second largest ocean in the world. It covers approximately 17% of Earth's surface and about 24% of its water surface area. It was literally a needle in haystack moment. The search was sadly a waste of time and resources. The families of the passengers, crew, and people working in the aviation business were sad and confused. Months passed by, years too, until everyone eventually gave up the search, accepting their loss. The company Santiago Airlines never fully recovered from the effect of the accident. No one wanted to board the airline for fear of their lives. Gradually, they started losing customers until it went out of business, finally, in 1956, 2 years after the disappearance. And that was the end of the story. Just another missing plane, just like the late Amelia Earhart, who went missing, or the British South American Airways Lancastrian plane that went missing on August 2nd, 1947. On October 12, 1989, at Brazil's Porto Alegre airport, officials saw an unauthorized plane flying around the base. Now, if you fly as much as possible, you will know that you can't enter an airport just like that. You have to let the officials in the control tower know minutes before landing that you are nearby so that they can do the needful, like clearing the runway to make the flight land successfully. This plane did none of that. The air traffic controllers tried contacting the pilot, but got no response. This was literally a flight risk. The plane circled the airport, then got close to the runway in the end, and made a perfect landing. The airport authorities ran towards the plane, probably even to punch the pilot in the mouth for flying in without warning. They noticed that the engine was still on after the plane landed, and the plane was in good condition, which at that time was nothing out of the ordinary. That is, until they saw the name of the plane boldly written on the body as Santiago Airlines. That can't be possible because Santiago Airlines was out of business 35 years ago after the infamous disappearance of Flight 5113. The authorities were puzzled. They made their way inside the plane, and what they saw was something bizarre. Everyone on board was dead and decomposed to the point that it was only their skeletons that was in the plane, perfectly seated with the seatbelts over them. It was a horror sight to everyone present. They went to the cabin and saw the pilot also dead like the rest of them, but they noticed that the pilot was holding the controls tightly, signifying that maybe he landed the plane. But if he did land the plane perfectly, how is he dead to the point that only his bones are remaining? Mind you, they still don't know which plane this is. After a little investigation, it began to dawn on them that this plane was the infamous Flight 513 that disappeared 35 years ago. Identifying the pilot, who was Captain Miguel Victor Curie, with his name tag on his shirt, helped the authorities arrive at this conclusion. Of course, this goes without saying that the news of this event went viral. Everyone wanted to know what happened. How does a plane disappear and appear 35 years later, land itself, and then everyone on board is dead and decomposed greatly? Now, it was a question that plagued everyone. It was so viral that a newspaper in America covered the story. For a story to travel that far without the internet says a lot about how crazy the event was. The Brazilian government looked into this strange event, but it was also stunned. As usual with every government in the world, they started to control the narrative, turning the story from a weird event to saying that the plane had just popped out of nowhere and landed safely. This lackluster explanation has led many to believe that the government had something to do with the disappearance, or was hiding something they saw. Some people even think that a shadowy organization took the plane off of the radar on purpose and used its passengers in a covert and probably illegal operation, and they could be so powerful that they have the government in their pockets. People started getting angry at the government's excuse of a story. People's families were on that plane and they died. They deserved a better explanation than what the government provided. An ex-physics teacher in Porto Alegre named Rodrigo de Manja said, "The people have a right to know everything about this plane, and the government has a duty to tell them." Others, including paranormal researcher Dr. Celso Atello, agreed with Manja, asking the government for full disclosure. Now, other mystifying theories started coming out. One of such theories was that wormholes exist, and this was a major proof of that, and is probably why the government is trying to hide it from the public. Dr. Celso Atello, one of the critics of the government, was a heavy believer in the wormhole theory. He used Albert Einstein's work as inspiration. Einstein worked on equations for his general theory of relativity in 1916. These equations showed that there are gaps in space that have an insanely strong gravitational pull and can gulp down anything that passes by them. We call these holes black holes. When Einstein proposed this theory, it was just that, a theory. We didn't have the technology to fact-check these theories. But guess what? NASA took a picture of a black hole in 2019, which proved that Einstein's theory was right all along, including the wormhole theory, which also meant that this story, no matter how weird it sounds, could be true. Wormholes act as tunnels connecting places in space-time in such a way that moving from point A to point B will take much less time than a trip through normal space will. If you play video games, you know how you quick travel or disappear to a location instead of actually driving to that location. That is a perfect example of what wormholes are. In some games, time passes, so you could quick travel in the afternoon. And when you arrive at your destination, it could be night. That's wormhole traveling. And because famous scientists like Stephen Hawking think wormholes might exist, people who are interested in unsolved aviation mysteries often think about how the theory could be used to explain the many missing planes over the years, including those that went missing in the famous disappearing zone known as the Bermuda Triangle. Basically, the wormhole idea may be a better explanation for Santiago Flight 513's disappearance and reappearance. In such, most cases of disappearances are never solved. Just like the two examples I gave earlier with the late Amelia Earhart and the British South American Airways Lancastrian plane. So now we don't know what to believe. Is it a wormhole? Could this be a sign of the divine? What is it? Well, the answer is simple. It is an Oscar-winning story. Okay, maybe not an Oscar-winning story, but it is still a story nonetheless. It never happened. If you search for Santiago Flight 513, you will never see results from a credible source. And when you dig deeper, like I did, I found out that there are no official records of Santiago Airlines ever existing. No plane, nothing. The city of Aachen, where the plane supposedly took off from, does not have an international airport. The closest airport is a regional airport in Limburg, Netherlands. So how and where did the plane fly from? The story was first published on November 14th, 1989, in the Weekly World News, a tabloid newspaper in the US that is known for making up silly and fake stories. This same newspaper clipping I shared earlier